Hello there, and welcome to episode 5. We have another great interview lined up today on Thyme, your PvP Pokemon Go podcast. Today, we're going to be talking to Empoleon Dynamite, our dear friend and leader of the PvPoke. We are delighted to welcome him here today, and we're going to get some pressing questions and find out all the secret information to help us win at Pokemon Go PvP.
So excited to have you here. Thanks for coming. We're going to start it off. I made some artwork for you.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. That is fantastic. I need to get that on my stream somehow.
Okay, I'll send you. I can send you the file in Discord. This is obviously yours to keep forever. But making ridiculous photoshops is what I do to add some levity. I was like, oh man, this is too perfect not to have. So this is all yours to welcome you and thank you for giving us your time to chat. We're really excited to hear what you have to say because obviously everyone who's serious in the PvP in Pokemon Go uses PvPoke. It's an amazing program, and so we just want to kind of hear about everything that goes behind the secrets to know all of this. So why don't we just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself before we jump into the more specific questions.
Sure, yeah. First, thanks so much for having me, and excited to be on the show. I'm Matt or Matthew. I run / develop PvPoke. PvPoke is it's a team of one, so any development stuff, article content stuff, or funny tweets you might see are probably from me, unless something mysterious has happened. But by day, I am a web developer, and by night, I am a Pokemon Go, also a Pokemon Go trainer, and I guess a web developer as well. So
wonderful. So I guess we'll start with the easy question. What got you into Pokemon Go before what got you into the data crunching of PvP?
That's a good question. I got into Pokemon Go, a longtime Pokemon fan, grew up on the games, and got into Pokemon Go summer of 2016, and was hooked ever since. And when PvP was announced and was coming out in December of 2018, I think it was, I knew I really wanted to do something for it. Make some kind of tool or some development stuff for it, and that really got my gears turning on what to do. And eventually, PvPoke was born from that. It was really kind of a simultaneous, before PvP leading up to the announcement and release of PvP. I knew I wanted to really be involved with it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So I remember the first few tournaments that I didn't know about PvPoke. So I was relying on old school team builders from Smogon, which obviously don't work very well for Pokemon Go, but just to get my coverage and everything. Then as soon as I found this tool, it was like, oh, this is just infinitely better in every way for what I'm trying to do and letting me know the wins and the losses. So what was your thinking? What's your favorite part of PvPoke? Let's start with that, because there's so much to play around with on this website. What do you love the most?
Yeah, I think my favorite part is probably the train feature. And in particular, I like the little substitute sprites. They're just
cute,
I think.
The vintage substitute sprites, fantastic stuff. I love that.
But the train feature itself, you can play out battles against a bot computer and kind of practice Pokemon in actual games that you may be thinking about powering up but not sure about the dust, and just get a hang of a team before you try it in game.
Before GBL, that was a super handy feature. I definitely enjoyed being able to jump in on that.
And it's also a fun, the data that comes from that. The training analysis feature is also a favorite haunt of mine, just digging into the numbers of what are the top teams, what are the top performing Pokemon, and trying to pick out what to recommend for people.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and a great place to talk about, because we love doing a lot with Silph. How do you how much does the training data affect your recommendations? Because obviously, pure statistics don't always match up with what the chosen meta is. And I see you adjusted, and it's fascinating stuff. So I just want to know, like, how much does training go into it, or what's your thinking behind your weighting of the Pokemon? For instance, we could do Firefly Cup, because that's still very fluid.
Yeah, the weighting initially is a little bit of guesswork. So when the cup gets announced, trying to guess, okay, Vigoroth is probably going to be popular, Toxicroak is probably going to be popular, and then looking at what beats those and what do they pair well with, and trying to guess what people would use in the meta. And then afterwards, once the Silph has some usage data, then the weightings pretty much come directly from that. And I don't try and take too much liberties, although sometimes, like, if there's a really important Pokemon that maybe isn't well represented enough in the rankings or has enough impact from the weightings alone, I might tweak some of the numbers here and there. Regrettably, I haven't been able to do training for Silph Cups recently.
Right.
And that's been a challenge of just finding the time to do training and rankings and everything for both Silph and Go Battle League, which has definitely been a struggle down the stretch.
Yeah, and with the world, the Go Battle League Worlds, the regionals going on, obviously that's at the top of everyone's mind and desire now that we have a pick six and open Great League. So I can see a lot of impact there. So speaking of the regional play qualifiers, how are you finding your data is matching up with the lines and the teams that the top players are bringing in?
That is a great question as well. Sometimes putting the rankings together, it's always kind of a imposter syndrome of like, is Reggie really that good? Or I don't know. Even when Trevenant was first released, there was a lot of discussion of like, oh, it's just high up on the rankings because it's bait dependent. But I think time has proven that Trevenant is very strong. And there were a lot of Registeel in the European regionals, so that was cool to see.
It is a sort of funny chicken and egg scenario. You know, you see that PvPoke is recommending that, like, Registeel is high up, so you say, okay, I need to have my Talonflame then. And then people have to bring an answer to the Talonflame to support. I know you need your answer to Talonflame anyway, but what comes first, the PvPoke recommendation or the actual popularity, is definitely something that I've been questioning over the last while, with the Silph Cups especially, because people will see, oh, well, okay, this is near the top, so I'm going to need to bring that. And how much of that is on your mind, I think, is something I've been thinking about. I watched back your stream talking about releasing this update, and you were mentioning how Talonflame dropped quite considerably. It is bait dependent in a lot of win scenarios. And the interesting matchup that you had with Swampert and Talonflame, where Swampert, if it doesn't optimize its move timing and doesn't hit the Hydro Cannon, all those things that we play out in real life in real Pokemon Go. And it's interesting to see then if Talonflame drops that far, but it is still a really good Pokemon.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that's a great question, Zacharias. I think it's definitely something I think about a lot too, whether, like, do people pick Pokemon because they're high up on PvPoke, or should things be high up on PvPoke because people pick them? And my philosophy on that is, I think I want my tools to be more descriptive than prescriptive. So representing what the meta is, then trying to tell people to use XYZ Pokemon. And it's hit or miss sometimes. But I think I would put a lot more emphasis on what people are playing and succeeding with in the real world, and using the PvPoke simulations and rankings as kind of like a first general look. Oh, here's what might be good. Here are some ideas for Pokemon I can run. But real world experience should trump that, which is why I love the training data so much, because it's kind of an even closer peek at kind of real world metrics that we don't really get. And then I love seeing usage data and win rate data in tournaments as well.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so what do you think has been your greatest predictive success, and what Pokemon flew under the data's radar and then overperformed in either a Silph or Open Go Battle League? Because obviously, yeah, I really like your stance. I think it's really important. This like, oh, this is a great starting place, but we need to apply real world experience and all those things. So what should we be looking for in maybe things that the data wasn't noticing that real players were noticing once they started taking the mons out, so to speak?
Let's see. Let me see if I can try and think of. It's a lot easier for me to think of examples that PvPoke missed than hit. A few examples would be like Zacian and Master League. Definitely not very high up on the PvPoke rankings, but if you go in to play actual Master League and Go Battle League, it's everywhere, and that's part of, like, it has really good synergy with other strong Master League Pokemon like Dialga. Its play style in general is just very dynamic, and when played well, when played right, it is such a force, and that's not really well represented on the PvPoke rankings either. I think, let's see, let me try and think of a meta where it was...
I've got a good one where,
okay.
So Brawler Cup, if you looked at Chargers, Quillfish was at the top of the list, but overall it was down in like the hundreds. But the data showed, if you were looking, if you swapped it in and they didn't have a confusion user, which is going to delete it, 2 poison jabs ahead, and it beat everything in the meta. And the data showed that, but no one was looking at Charger data. They were just sticking with overall. I brought it in and I absolutely just leveled the cup with it. It was so good because I was like, oh man, just a small energy lead here, which is what Sableye was doing in the Obsidian Cup and what Walrein is doing everywhere now. Because if he gets 1 or 2 powder snows, and you know the data under Chargers shows it, or switches too, it just becomes oppressive when it otherwise seems much weaker. Not that Walrein seems weak, but these other ones definitely do. So personally, like, I love the overall ranking, but when I'm team building, I actually love looking more at your breakdowns of what makes a good lead, closer, switch, charger, attacker. I think that data actually would really benefit more people to look at because of how the secrets it's telling us. It's there, you just have to look a little bit harder for it. I wouldn't have caught Quillfish if I hadn't been looking for people with fast move advantage. So I love that aspect personally.
That's awesome. I'm glad that Coalfish worked out for you. It's definitely a fun and energy dynamic Pokemon. And I think what you pointed out was a really good point, that when I see a lot of discussions on like the PvPoke rankings, there's a lot of discussions of like, oh, the rankings are just 1 shield to 1 shield, which isn't true. Just got to dig a little deeper, and that's something I can do a better job of helping guide people to look a little deeper in that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. How do we get the most out of PvPoke? Because I've given one specific example that I think worked really well, but how can, you've got so much data here, how do we make the most of it? How do we utilize it best?
That is also a really hard question. I think it's hard to say, like, here's how you should use PvPoke, because everyone's gonna be coming at different angles and wanting different things from it. Not everybody needs to like completely drill down into like breakpoint stuff, or like some people are much more intuition based team builders, and might not need the team builder suggestions, but I'd say a couple of features I would recommend looking at are the training analysis feature. When I'm updating it, is a good feature to look at for team ideas and just get a good vibe of the meta. And that feature kind of flies under the radar a bit. It's a bit buried in the menus, but and I think ability to save your Pokemon or teams in custom groups is also really handy to just quickly reference your Pokemon in your collection or specific teams you have built.
100 different teams and 100 different cups. You kind of need to have that that backup so you can figure out which team you were supposed to be running. Oh, I had planned when I had it written down somewhere.
Yeah, it's like 5 drafts to go, and
yeah, I usually have 8 to 10 PvPoke tabs up for one for each tournament I'm running. As I'm planning my team and seeing the layout, and then as I'm playing with the next cup, and as I'm building teams, and I'm trying to figure out, well, what are these good options? It's just, I get drowned in this stuff, which is great because it's really fun to play with. I think I like team building more than I like tournament playing because it's so fun and novel, and you don't get your hopes crushed when you find out that the mod's really not working as well as you wanted to. Looking at you, Sharpedo, you should be performing so much better, but you're always just absolutely just getting destroyed. Yeah, great stuff. So what do you think is the hardest to simulate accurately? What do you find you struggle with?
Definitely like the debuff moves or buff moves are pretty difficult to pin down, and chance debuff moves as well. Because the way the simulator is built, it isn't built to handle like Octazooka very well or things like that.
Yeah.
So needing to drill down and really get deep in the sandbox on, okay, if Kingdra lands Octazooka the first go around, can we 2-shield through, I don't know, Cresselia? Just weird stuff like that that can be pretty tough to pick apart.
Yeah,
that's a really challenging one.
And with the last update as well, I know that something I want to take a look at is usage of moves like Bubble Beam or actually even Flame Charge on Talonflame. I know could be a little better because there's some matchups that like Talonflame or Banting could win going straight Flame Charge or straight Bubble Beam, but they aren't currently doing that. So that'll be something I need to go in and tweak a little bit.
Banting is a nightmare of a Pokemon to try and sim. It's like, oh, we've got an energy move, we've got a standard move, we've got a low energy move, we've got a bait move, we've got 3 different others. And he always seems to never, like, you just never know how it's going to work out. Because if you call the baits right, he's terrible. If you call the baits wrong, he's completely broken. And it's like, even knowing what move he's running is a fast move throws everything off. I can feel how difficult it will be to kind of even try and approach, is straight bubble the best way to go here if it's not a fire type, right? Like, outside of the obvious moments, when is it the move worth going for? Flame Charge too, yeah, it's interesting and difficult.
Yeah, there's so many scenarios, and maybe it's a little better to have Banting a bit down in the gutters. So out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, I like the difference that just going straight Razor Leaf on Shadow Victory Bell in the current cup, that makes a massive difference. Or going straight for the Power Up Punch with Shadow Mawile with Firefang. It flips a decent few matches, not trying to go for the bait. Like, obviously you're always going to go shield down, and in that situation they're never going to want to try and shield the play rough because you're going straight Power Up Punch by getting that boost on your Firefangs. So trying to figure out how you tell the simulation, no, I'm fine losing a shield here. I want to win the match.
Yeah, that's a challenging thing. And in the previous update, one of the ways I started working on it was to have Pokemon not shield until they had to shield. And that turned out to be a bad idea for multiple reasons. Because the ratings, the battle ratings on the site are based on the amount of HP you have remaining.
Right.
So as a consequence, if you were a really good bulky Pokemon and not shielding attacks, you would have lower battle ratings than other Pokemon because you weren't spending your shields.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, that's not going to work.
That's not going to work at all. Yeah, that's interesting because, you know, especially when we watched a lot of the regional qualifiers, most of the high-level players save their shields as long as they can, and accurately simming and reflecting, like, you don't want to take the first one because you want to keep shield advantage. I don't even know how you begin to try and make the program recognize that it's succeeding by ending with very little life. It's like, no, I want to end with 5 HP. So they don't get energy gains. I won the swap and I'm up a shield. Great. That's so yeah. That seems like a nightmare to try and figure out.
I will say another reason I like the training simulator a lot is since that exists, it kind of alleviates some of the burden of making the default sims perform 100% to perfection.
Right.
Because people are going to be playing out actual full battles in there, and you'll have a really good, really full picture of what performs in a full PvP battle. So having that as kind of a backdrop definitely alleviates some of the stress of trying to get the default sims to a pixel perfect place.
So what you're saying is if everyone listening goes and spends more time with the training tool, we will all have better PvPoke data because you'll have this background play data to help solidify weightings and rankings?
I do, yes, I do encourage that.
Okay,
the more the
perfect.
merrier. Absolutely.
That's a great plan. Have you ever seen anyone using it, PvPoke, just so wrong that you wanted to pull your hair out? You're just like, no, that's a terrible team line you built. You've done everything wrong here. Have you ever just seen someone's like not really getting how to use it?
That's a funny question. I think my answer has to be, if anyone is using PvPoke wrong, it's probably my fault. So like there hypothetically shouldn't be a wrong way to use it. And if someone is using it incorrectly somehow, then there's probably something better I could do with the interface, or changing some buttons or what have you. One thing that does irk me a little bit is in ranking discussions. When somebody drops like, oh, Talonflame is number 120. Those numbers don't really mean anything. So it's really hard to say, like, in a ranking discussion, like, I can't say that Umbreon is the 120th best Pokemon in Great League. That sounds ridiculous. Of course, It's not. There aren't 120 Pokemon better than Talonflame. But the little rating grades, like if I said Talonflame is a B Pokemon, that's kind of underwhelming. So you could definitely make arguments for B plus or A, but that sounds a little less drastic than, number 120.
Like, that's terrible. It's like, well, I mean, I think you can play, maybe not to great success, but to success, anything in the top 500 in Great League. You're going to have some rough matchups if all of them are in those real upper numbers, but there are plenty of perfectly viable and usable mons in the 300-400s in Open Great League. So yeah, maybe grade inflation is why everyone's feeling spoiled. It's like, when we talk about gotcha games, it's like, oh, that's A tier. Oh, that's terrible. I need SS plus tier. And it's like, well, why do we have anything above A? We've devalued the meaning of, it's a really good Pokemon, 122 when, there's 700 is actually a really good number. And it actually performs poorly in mini matchups, because if it's locked in, you throw a Brave Bird, great, they farm you down. So like it's got really bad uses, but when it's used perfectly, 122 makes it handle a lot of the top ones. So yeah, I mean, I think your ratings are very good for a general, like, again, when you're looking at overalls and uses and shields down, right? Let's use Talonflame as an example, right? It's overall set at 122. And we know it's a terror and everyone sees it. When we look at it as a closer, it's 72, right? It's much, because very few things live the Brave Bird if they don't resist it or aren't super bulky.
Yeah, or if we want to pick apart, like, let's pick apart those individual rankings a little bit further. So we've got, you were looking at with Coalfish, Talonflame has 90.9 in the charger category. So it's got an A as a charger with energy. It can steamroll teams, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So digging into more stuff like that is always helpful.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, and I guess that's the big thing.
Sorry. Go ahead, Zacharias.
No, I was just going to say it depends on your play style then as well. You know, so in one person's hands, an Incinerate Mon is just absolutely beastie, and then another just doesn't live up to the hype. You know, some people want that fast snarl, you know, kind of usage, and some people want trying to sneak in that Incinerate, trying to time it absolutely perfectly to just pull off, and to know the difference of the two styles of playing it.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because Lurgan, when we interviewed him, just didn't feel comfortable enough using Incinerate as a fast move, so he didn't bring Talonflame, even though they thought it was very strong. And it's especially in the era of snuck fast moves. That's one of those real things. But when we were doing Cave Cup for factions, I snuck in a Dragon Tail with Strigology almost every game, if not two. And it's like at that point, I pretty much win almost all of the non-hard counter matchups, because I'm getting an extra Dragon Tail's worth of stab fast move damage. I'm getting an extra huge chunk of energy to get to an Aqua Tail or an Outrage faster. And it's interesting. Have you looked at how to manage? I mean, I'm hoping snuck fast moves go away, so it's probably not worth investing in. But have you looked at how that affects Pokemon in general?
Yeah, there was definitely some situations in the Sims which have been reduced in the last update, the last site update, not game update, where like Talonflame would be sneaking extra Incinerates and, you know, knocking out Swampert, much to Swampert's dismay. But that since Pokemon practice optimized move timing now in the default Sims, that's a little less, and Talonflame is much worse off for it. I've thought about having some kind of like percentage, like sneak 50% of the time kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's always been when handling that kind of thing, it's always been a mindset of like, okay, if I develop this, how much time is that going to take, and how much longer is this going to be in the game? As it turns out, a while. But maybe that's what I got to do. I got to implement that, and then the moment I do,
it will fix it. Yeah, you have to take one for the team to solve the battle for us. I mean, I've just started adding an extra fast move for most bonds when I'm checking matchups, just to see like worst case scenario. Because at Sableye, he's going to get an extra one in Walrein. He's going to get a Powder Snow in 9 times out of 10. It just feels like it's like just being ready for if I need to know if that's going to absolutely flip a matchup or it's not a big deal. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable approach for not making you program something that isn't intended as far as we can tell. But at the same time, who knows when it will get fixed out, because it feels like it's only been ramping up during this off season for repairs, as Niantic claims it.
They have been rolling out some recent updates for, I know in the last update, there were some specific TBL fixes.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see how those pan out.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. So, all right, give us the dirt. Which mon are you secretly over simming because you're in love with it? We need to know your secret favorite mons. Or
Yes.
you're hiding so that people don't realize it's actually overpowered.
Not so secret favorite mon, Shadow Flagon. Similar to how you're talking about Dragalge, I love running it in the lead, getting Shadow Dragon-tail sneaks are powerful.
Yep.
So good stuff. You can 2-shield through almost anything. And any chance I got to make Flagon number 1, I definitely go out of my way to do that. It hasn't happened really. But if there's any chance to boost up Flagon, I am all for it.
He was great in Cave Cup. I was running him every week with Dragalge, the double Dragon Tail Menace. Just not much you can do.
I was running that in Dungeon Fields for factions this week. However, my opponent had a full water team, 8 water types, and 2 of them were Melodic and Gyarados against my poor dragons. So the super effective non-stab dragon fast moves unfortunately overcame the stab non-super effective dragon fast moves that day.
Yeah.
Melodic is definitely a strong one for the dungeon factions. I kind of wish I'd ran Shadow Flagon in the Nemesis Cup. I should have braved up and used it.
A recent example, like for not Flagon jokes aside, I do try and strike a balance between, again, this is kind of like should the rankings be prescriptive or descriptive? And trying to balance letting the numbers do their own thing and also trying to make sure the rankings look right. Just kind of pass an eye test. And just recently I was toying with Azumarill, who is a little lower these days. And was messing around with some of the weightings, messing around with default IVs. So like Azumarill beats Medicham by default, whereas currently it doesn't. So little stuff like that to try and see if I can make Azumarill climb a bit more in the rankings. That didn't pan out, but do some tweaks like that every now and then.
It's interesting to me how manual it ends up being, but I guess that's just the nature of it because you're effectively just feeding an AI. You're just slowly building it up and you have to give it all that data to grow.
It is manual work. There isn't an AI behind it though, or at least it's not like machine learning in any kind of...
Wait, it's just very early machine learning in that kind of sense. You're building up an array, like a false brain. You've got your cue cards and you're just steadily punching in your holes.
Right. And trying to figure out like if the math is solid and if like, I don't know, I'm never very happy with the rankings. So I really can't leave them well enough alone. And it ends up being a lot of manual, like, how can I make Talonflame a few points better? And then messing around for an hour and not really getting anywhere.
I hear that, and that is definitely where my mind went. Once you said that in the stream, it really hit me. I hadn't realized just how symptomatic it would be. Like how quickly a peak apex predator mon like Talonflame can just jump down the ranks like that. And like you're saying, you don't like people saying, "Oh, this is rank this." I'm definitely guilty of that. That I go and I say, well, and mostly because I'm looking at it from a spice angle. I want to pick something below the 50s. I want to feel like, oh, I made this work. I made something ranked, 200 work in a cup.
Oh no! Do you know what I just did? I allowed Talonflame into all the like
Spice
PvPoke
videos.
band top 50 tournaments.
Exactly.
Oh no.
no.
Yeah. What have you done?
What horror have you wrought on mankind?
I think an interesting like related point to that, on a more serious note, I try to think of the rankings and in general PvPoke as a whole as like a general, like the information on there should be a general guide and not like Talonflame is 10 points worse than Primate or whatever.
Yeah.
And just kind of having a mindset of there's always going to be stuff on PvPoke that is rated lower than it should be. There's always going to be stuff rated higher than it should be. And to some credit, there's stuff that's going to be rated about where it should be. But just having that kind of knowing that, and it is a tool, it has its advantages and disadvantages, and just having the know-how to look at Talonflame and go, oh, I bet that would do better than PvPoke is saying, or looking at, I don't know, what would be overrated, like Registeel maybe. Registeel maybe might not do as well as it's saying.
I guess it comes back to what Bidricker was saying earlier about the adding an extra fast move as well. It's nearly about knowing the state of the game as well as knowing it's what's the thing they always say? I did physics and they would say, you're using your calculator. The calculator doesn't know what you're trying to accomplish. To a certain extent, you have to use PvPoke, like you say, as a tool. It's your calculator. It doesn't know what you're trying to achieve is Talonflame 2 shielding and sweeping an entire team, or Talonflame dropping a Brave Bird, swapping out. Like you can do that. You can put in sandbox mode and play around, but you need to know what you're trying to accomplish. So it's nice to hear that this is the way your mindset is made for making it, that the rankings like that, that it has an 83.6. It's like 83.6 with that asterisk to say like this is what it's doing, but there's a certain amount in that that has wiggle room, let's say.
Yeah, I really like the calculator analogy. I think that works really well. The alternative is like, I don't know, like if I treated the rankings as some kind of set in stone law of the land, then I would just be restless over it and like fighting people in the comment section of like, no, Registeel is mathematically superior. And yeah, that's not a world I want to be in.
In fairness to you, like Registeel, once they gave it that cannon, it was fairly obvious. Like nothing can not shield. It's always going to get its shield investment back, and I think that makes it. If you're going to call it rank 1, if you're going to call it top 10, whatever you want to call it, it is up there. So there's definitely some truism in the rankings, and that's why we trust it. That's why it's a useful system, because it is true. It does work. So no, credit to you and how it's working.
Yeah, I think like whenever I feel too bad about Master League's ACN or whatever, there is at least a little proof in the pudding of like, look at some of the EU regional teams and the PvPoke top rankings.
Yeah.
Registeel, Metacham, Trevenant, Galarian Stunfisk, Walrein, they're all there.
So, yeah, I think that all of the top 10 made a regular appearance in most teams. And then there's a few outliers because they fit exactly what the role of the team needed was. But I was looking it over and it's like, all right, yep, there's Metacham, there's Registeel, there's Galarian Stunfisk, Trevenant, Walrein. Yep, they're all right there at the top. Justified completely that the top battlers know that the data is backed up by play. They're performing as well as we expect, which is super duper well. So talking about that, right, the individual number data, we need to take loosely the calculator. When we use the team builder here, how would you rate the importance of the 4 overviews you give us grades on once we put together our team? The coverage, bulk, safety, consistency. Which when you're looking at least, do you value the highest versus them? Because I know I always throw bulk out the window. Like that's the one where it's like, oh, D and bulk, great. I'm going to burn through them before I need to shield, which doesn't work, but nonetheless that's what you do when you run 3 shadows. But yeah, so talk to us about the overview you give us in the team builder, because this is another great tool for everyone.
Yeah, let's see. So we've got coverage, bulk, safety, and consistency. I really think, like, again, going back to using PvPoke, thinking about it as a general tool than like specific, like you shouldn't worry too much if you have Bs across the board, or like, oh no, I don't have an A in coverage. That's totally fine. You're gonna be okay. I think the thing is, having an F in any of these categories can still work. Like the coverage grade doesn't evaluate ABB teams very well, because it looks, oh, you have 2 water types. That's bad coverage, but you know, it works. Bulk, I would say in general, I would look at the grades here as like, if you get all A's, that team is probably super flexible and forgiving to play, because things that get all A's are going to be things like, I don't know, Cresselia, Giratina, and Swampert, and big, bulky, dynamic stuff that is going to have a lot of forgiveness in how it plays. I think probably if you have like an F in safety, that's probably something to look at. That means all of your Pokemon are usually hard countered, which if you're running a Bastiodon team, you might not care about, because you're going to be doing a lot of hard countering yourself. And the consistency one is also a good one to look at. I would say safety and consistency are both pretty good grades to look at in terms of how difficult is this team going to be to actually play. Because if you have low safety or low consistency, you might find yourself trapped in a number of situations.
Yeah, I really like consistency. It's where Man Team finally fails, because it's like, oh, if I make every bait and this is the perfect team, it's like, oh, that's not a good team at all. And I always really look at my safety rating, because some mons are super great. But if every mon has wonderful matchups and horrible matchups, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to lose the lead roughly 50% of the time over enough battles. Can I swap into something that's not just it's game over for me because now the rest of the match plays out? And I think that's a really useful metric, especially. Whereas right, bulk, if you can safely swap out, you can kind of navigate your way around some weaknesses in bulk. But if your only counter to one of their mons loses the lead, you have to swap it out, and you never get it lined up with what you know they're bringing, right? You've got one fighter and you know they've got a Bastiodon, and you just can't get it lined up. There's no way to come back to it. If Bastiodon is safe, then you lose. We talked about this. If finding your winning lines, and safety gives you ways to fight back into it, so that even if, like I talked about, I climbed to Legend with Medicham, Altaria, Azumarill, really boring team, but all of them are so bulky that even if Medicham doesn't go against Bastiodon, Azumarill can often get it low enough that Altaria can limp it out, and then I still have a Medicham to deal with whatever is left. And so I can still sneak a win because I've got a very safe line there. I think that's a really important metric, and I really appreciate it being in the team builder.
I would say also, whether you're doing Go Battle League or Silph makes a difference in how you should read this too.
Yeah, for sure.
Because in Go Battle League, you don't have to cover the whole meta at once. All you have to do is play 1,000 games and win more than you lose. And running ABB teams is often very successful, and Bastion teams can be very successful because they can't see it coming. Silph, you do kind of have to cover the whole meta, sort of, because in the length of a tournament, you're going to be encountering a number of different teams. You're probably going to want a lot more safety, because unless you're very good at predicting and playing the whole rock, paper, scissors game, you'll want to have some flexibility in your Silph matchups. And yeah, the team builder as a whole, I hope, is a helpful tool. And again, I would look at those letter gradings as more of a general guide than a strict thing. So if you get an F somewhere, maybe think about what impact that has and how to play around it. But
I've also found when team building a solid 5 and finding that you've got a good rating there, and then find whatever you want for your 6, but don't worry as much, because usually the rating's like, oh, well, it's not covering these 8 months. It's like, well, no one's running those, so it's okay. So I get a really good holistic picture at 5, and then I find what I feel like I need to slot in to cover something at 6, and I'm less concerned if the 6 rating is not quite as broad spectrum overall solid. Is a good way I've found it plays out.
It's always funny when looking at your top threats and you've got XL Lotad or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's cute. I'm never going to run into that.
But then it just makes me want to build one to bring it. Oh, I could beat my own team with this.
Surely XL. I've got one. I'm sitting on a Hundo. I'm just
nice.
waiting to find a reason to bring him out.
Ooh.
I haven't powered him up yet because I can't drop 500,000 on him for no reason. But man, if there's ever a cup where he sneaks into the top 20, instantly I'm going to run him. So please don't accidentally put him up in the 20s just to make me burn 500,000 dust.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We're gonna get a Twitter post after my tournament starts. It's like, this was because I was mad at Did Record and he jumped 500,000 dust. Ha ha ha. I'd laugh at it. I'll be honest. I'd be like, man, you got me so good. That was a month's worth of dust there. But yeah.
Now I have plans for April Fool's next year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something I do have to be careful about because, some people might not know that it's April 1st or understand that it's a joke. And someone will power up an XL Lotad and then, oh no, that's kind of my fault.
Listen, if you've got a Hundo Lotad, you power it up. No regrets. That mon is ready to go. All right. Well, I think I've answered all my questions. The question is, is there anything you want to chat about, talk over, either your own work or PvPoke in general? Let's hear from you what your thoughts are.
I have another question, if possible.
Yeah, go for it.
On the subject of what kind of data I like to work with, I was kind of curious, what kind of data do you like to see?
Oh, that's a good question. We'll let the scientist start, and then we'll have the Old Norse scholar go second. So Zacharias, take the lead here.
I really like to see the kind of finite breakdown of the numbers. So when it says, that it's an 86 loss, that you're going to get absolutely murdered. I like to dig right into that and see the granular where the loss happens. So on that 86 ranking, that's entirely really off the HP of the mon. The winner in that scenario is one with a lot of HP. But you can still be one fast move off a loss. It can still be a tweak here, a tweak there. It can still be IV dependent. So I like to build up my own little stat book on that to say, well, okay, they might think that they're going to beat Shadow Victory Bell in this scenario, but my IVs and the fact that I'm going to run straight to the acid spray and throw that and not try and fake out a leaf blade. Even if I can get to 2 leaf blades and I only get to 1 acid spray, sometimes the acid spray is the right choice. So I build up my own little playbook at the start of a month and I say, well, this is how I'm going to beat the top 5. So that tends to be where my my little personal stat book goes. So I make up a little Excel spreadsheet and go through. So I steal your rankings off the download CSV, and I say, okay, well, this is the meta I need to beat, and I go through with the mons I want to play, regardless of the ranking, or typically looking down the rankings, like I say, for something that's that I enjoy or already have built, and where it can fit in. And so that's where I go.
I like that. I like the playbook a lot.
Yeah, so what I like to do is I look at early practice tournaments to kind of build a general meta, which I find is usually narrower than your general meta, which is my starting point always and very good. But I like to say, all right, which mons am I seeing on every team, right? So for next month, we're going to see Vigoroths and Lickitungs and Frostlass all over the place. And then I like to look at unique coverage, the mon that might rank terribly, but uniquely covers these cores, so that when I bring it in, I know that 9 times out of 10, it will have 2 good matchups because they're going to show up on every team. And that's kind of where I look finding spice. So for last month in the Nemesis Cup, I saw a ton of Polyraths and I saw a ton of Frostlass. I was like, all right, everyone loves that. What beats both of those? And the answer was Tentacruel, which is not high in the rankings, but it beats those 2 mons consistently well. So I ran Tentacruel and I went 6-1 in the practice tournament. I was like, all right, Tentacruel, and I brought Shadow Tyranitar to cover the Galvantulas that everyone was bringing with it, because they're like, all right, they're going to lead one or they're going to safe swap one. So we just lead Tentacruel and I catch one, and when they safe swap in Frostlass or Galvantula, Shadow Tyranitar comes in and I laugh all the way to the bank. So I really like to find out what I think are going to be the top picks, and then look at, like, I'll build the team in Team Builder of just those and see what it suggests as unique ways to beat them. And so those mons, it's like, oh, it's rank 110, but it beats both of them. And rank 110 in a Silph Cup is a little bit wilder than 110 in all Great League. So I should specify. And so I like to look at that unique angle with the data and find my spicy picks. And I'm doing all right with Tentacruel and Shadow Tyranitar, running both of them this month and having a lot of fun with them. And Coalfish was the same way, because everyone was safe swapping into fighters or fairies. And so it's like, great, I've got a poison type, I bring them in, and Aquatail is fast and does enough damage that if I one shield with him, he will always get to them needing 2 shields or them being completely devastated, and I can farm down because of how he outpaces to get to the second Aquatail. So I found this very good niche in one of the more restricted weights. He was the Bantam weight option that really did a lot of work for the team as a nice glue to help me have my hard lead or my hard wins rotate and pivot out. So that's how I really like to use your data. And I mean, you know, it's been working out pretty well for me overall. I think my overall win rate is 77% in Silph tournaments.
That's awesome. That is really good.
Yeah. So, you know, we both work hard and play a lot of Silph. Overall, I'm like 215, 216 in the 200s. And I think that's my key to finding a good team, is finding what I find is a very good pivot for the top mons that the meta is running, and then building around it to cover its weaknesses, rather than starting with top stuff and building outwards. But that's my approach to it, because I always like trying to determine the meta, because I come from a competitive Magic the Gathering background. And I love playing not meta, and I love knowing what will beat the meta. So guessing what Ireland is overall going to really like to run in the cup, and then building a team that does very well against it is what I find the most fun. And your data is really good at doing that if you know what you're trying to do. So when I build a team of top mons, even though no one's going to run Quagsire and Polyrath and Frostlass, you can't. It's impossible in Nemesis. But knowing that I can cover those 3 because they're going to be on 70% of the teams gives me a really good Pokemon to throw in and use.
That's actually a really good shout out as far as like tips and tricks go. If you haven't tried it, you can use the team builder from the opposite perspective of, hey, I want to beat these Pokemon.
Yeah.
These Pokemon are appearing a lot. What beats them? Put in a team of those Pokemon, and then you can see what threatens them.
Definitely didn't do that last year. with regionals to try and beat Lurgan Rocket because I knew he'd bring us Cresselia. He still beat me, but I was prepared. I got a game off of him, so I counted it as a win. But yeah, like especially if you know, just like if you know people are going to want to bring these things, especially once like you know your local community, there are players who are like, oh, I'll just always lean on Sableye. Sableye is amazing. I know how to run it. I'm just going to bring it. Galvantula is kind of one of the go-tos. I suspect in our local meta, not the Sanguine Bazaar, which is our spicy cup where everyone runs complete nonsense. It's delightful because you never know what's going to show up there. But in the Ireland Cup that I usually participate in, I will wager Galvantula is going to have a much higher presence than in a lot of places. Just because you kind of, we talk about how great in-person tournaments are. One of the reasons for like knowing everyone is that once you know the group, you can play the mind games with the meta instead of just the general open overall meta, which I think is real interesting. And I'm sure it's happening at the high levels, at the regional qualifiers. Like, all right, I know these players, I know what they like to do. We've seen them perform elsewhere and in factions and everything. You'll have an inkling of what they're going to bring. And I think that building their team and seeing weaknesses to see if you can find a way to work your way in is a really good idea.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why we saw so many, well, they weren't like everywhere, but a good number of Cresselia Diggersby teams in Frankfurt.
Yes.
Was because Lurgan won with that in Liverpool.
Yeah,
For sure.
For sure. I don't think either of those were on many people's radars. And then his team performed incredibly well. I mean, he's a great player too. I don't act like his team was just so unexpected, no one can handle it. He's a great player, but like, all right, we know this is a winning team. Let's bring and make it work and practice with it. And yeah, it's interesting to see people who can warp the metas with their successful plays of that stuff. All right, well, we are running out of time here, and that's okay. I think we covered some great stuff. But let's end by giving you kind of any shout outs, requests, plugs you want to give us. Obviously, everyone's going to be going and using PvPoke and the training tool. We know the greatest thing. But anything else you'd like to mention or bring up before we let you go?
Oh, well, thank you. I'll give a shout out to my Patreon supporters.
I'll provide a link down below for everyone to his Patreon as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone who's been supportive and yeah, you can find me on Twitter at PvPoke. I have a bunch of different names, so it's good to list them all. Empoleon Dynamite, there it is. Yes, is my Twitch handle, and Reddit as well.
Well, again, thank you so much. This was fascinating and great discussion. We all use your tool, so we love hearing your thoughts behind it and best ways to utilize it. So we really appreciate your time and look forward to continue utilizing this great project you put together for us. Anything you'd like to say, Zacharias?
Yeah, just thanks so much. It's been a pleasure chatting, and it's great to hear how the mind behind it thinks of Pokemon Go PvP, and really looking forward to seeing what new features and new ways of using the tool going forward now.
Thanks so much.
All right, thanks. And we look forward to hearing from you all next time. If you've got any great ideas or any questions, drop them down below. And we'd love to hear from you all. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks. Bye.